So we are talking about the mainstream media versus the new media. We're talking about whether the public, whether you, whether I, Mike, anybody here, do we actually trust the mainstream media, or are we very skeptical of it? A new study by the YouGov poll of 1,650 people found that 66% of UK public do not trust TV journalists, and 75% of the public don't trust newspaper journalists. And I don't know if you've been watching the news today, but the BBC has come under fire for its hostile interview with the leader of the Muslim Council of Britain, which happened on Women's Hour a couple of weeks back. And a quote and a letter was put forward. 200 journalists, activists, writers have signed that letter as well. So it just goes to show that actually there's way more distrust in the UK right now of mainstream media than there is of anything else. People are moving to social media to find information about things. Mike, you run Common Sense Network, I guess, like as an alternative source of media. What do you think about this?
I mean, so a part of me wants to get into the specifics of that interview because I watched the interview and I disagree with those journalists that said she was mistreated. Yep, I do.
Why do you disagree?
We can go into that in great detail, which I look forward to. But before we go into that, I think more generally speaking, what we must kind of be careful to do before we get into the debate even is to ensure that we're not too nostalgic, or no, nostalgic isn't even the term, but we don't rose tint the vision we have of social media. This notion that social media is going to save the day and save us from the mainstream media that's driven by 5 billionaires, I think it's a bit flawed for a number of different reasons. It's the same social media that has influenced the last 4 elections in ways we did not think could be the case, both in the UK, in America, and pretty much around the world. We saw Cambridge Analytica, we saw the mining of data and social media. We've seen the rise of tech conglomerates really that run the way we think about communication. Their leadership is typically opaque, and on top of that, we have no clue how they make decisions. You know, this idea that that social media is the savior. Let's not forget, it's the same social media that fake news is perpetrated on. Same social media that doxing occurs. I mean, there's so much to go through. Same social media that's actually harming young people, right? Because it's, you know, Instagram's having to remove likes because literally young people's mental health is being destroyed. So I don't want us to kind of have this kind of mainstream media is bad, social media good discussion. I think we should get into the nuance and really work out what each are good for and how we have a liberal democratic process that actually benefits us all. So we can start there, and then I'm more than happy to go into that debate if you want to do that.
I do think though that social media has helped and done things that mainstream media hasn't done, and I think that we could already see that with protests over the years that have not been reported or purposefully been left up by mainstream media because of other agendas. Leckygate, you're talking about NSARS, we're talking about Black Lives Matter. You know, pre-George Floyd, even Black Lives Matter protests was something that weren't being reported by the mainstream media. It is through social media that so much stuff has happened. You know, there's conversation about the internet and social media and its play in the Arab Spring and in sort of like uprisings across the world. So I think that we can't say that social media hasn't done anything at all, but I think we can, and maybe you're right, maybe the debate isn't about social media versus mainstream media, but is about what is mainstream media not doing that social media is doing, and how do we either just get rid of mainstream media completely and change social media and make social media, because the difficulty with mainstream media is that it's singular narratives by singular organizations, and that's it. Whereas like the social media is, you know, singular platforms with multiple sources, multiple pieces of information, multiple perspectives. And that's the difference, is that you have to physically leave your house and, you know, find the Guardian, find the Metro, find the Sun, find the Daily Star, and all the papers in order to get a different perspective. And even then, you're still getting a singular narrative from each and every one of those papers. Whereas with social media, I can go on Twitter, right? And on Twitter, there are like millions of different perspectives that differ from myself.
And there could be millions of bad perspectives, unchecked perspectives, unfettered perspectives, fake perspectives.
But so can the news. So can, you know,
not in the same way. My auntie having a go on Facebook is not the same as a journalist that spent 3 years at university researching a story that's been fact checked by multiple editors.
Yeah, but the fact checking part is where I would challenge you.
I agree with you. I agree with you that they're different, and so I agree with you that they're similar in that it's people speaking. But I don't think you could say they're the same. I don't think you could say everyone on Twitter is just the same as having a credible news network that has a complaints procedure, that has that you got the National Union of Journalists. I mean, there's a whole process between when it comes to broadcast and journalism and stuff like that. I take it
is that when it's a person on social media, it's that person's opinion and their own agenda. When it's a newspaper, it's a newspaper's entire agenda, and we've seen that recently with the article posted about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, and I think that the difficulty with that article is that I think it was the Daily Star what have they done? They've purposefully made a point out of something. They're racist in that article in the way that they've completely written about Meghan Markle over the years. That is what I'm talking about.
In that article,
that's the agenda of the paper, not the person.
So you think they're racist in the article they wrote about Meghan Markle? What's racist? What's racist about
the way that they have been?
No, I'm talking about this article we just saw, where it says that woman who likes privacy announces her birth to 7-point-something billion people. What part of that is racist?
Taking the piss, right? That's what it's doing. So maybe it's not racist in a direct way, but indirectly, it's definitely a microaggression. You know, there's
what did they do to everybody?
Hold on, you could no, but this is the point though, that you wouldn't do it with anybody else. You wouldn't do it if you, Mike, went to them.
What?
No, if you, Mike, had gone to them and done this particular thing, or no, not like you, Mike. I don't know. Sam, the white guy next door, had done this, they would not have acted in the same way as they have done with Meghan. And in fact, we can see it in the way that they have.
I'm black as well.
Yeah, that's why I said Sam, the white guy next door.
Oh, I see.
Sam, the white yeah, so I changed it up, Mike. I changed it up. Talking about Sam, the white guy next door. But look, enough about what I think on this matter. And this is the beauty of social media, because we're doing this on social media. Let's bring out some other perspectives, because this isn't about me and my gender. You know,
I think you're getting off the hook here, because I've got questions for you. But let's bring on Michael and Pofi, who's our political editor. I know Michael takes a keen interest in the royals. I heard, rumor is, folks, that Michael actually collects pictures of Meghan Markle, and he's got a little kind of folder where he keeps them. Is this true, Mike?
That is absolutely not true. But maybe I should. But look, great discussion to you both, and thanks for having me. I will say this, you know, I found it highly intriguing. Yes, it was during the Trump presidential run, but I did find it highly intriguing when we got to see, forgive the reference, but big tech. So Jack Dorsey, Zuckerberg, and that chap from Google, I forget his name, before Congress. And the reality there was that there was a real discussion, which I think is a pertinent conversation. The pertinent conversation that needs to be had is this: social media cannot have the benefits of being the publisher without responsibility. And this is where I agree with MT as far as it comes to the example you use. You know, Instagram is having to take away likes because they're destroying or affecting young people's mental health. So you can't give people the freedom and the opportunity to say whatever they like. But when it comes to accepting the responsibility, you kind of back away and say, well, actually, we're just a platform. And I think for me, I love the access that social media has given and the opportunity has given to voices like ourselves. But I do think there needs to be a conversation about how, and I'm going to say the dirty R word, regulate. I know no one likes to hear that because, oh, why are you trying to put brakes on us? But it's there for our own good. And the perfect example, actually, is the story about Meghan Markle and the court case that she won against, I believe it was Metro, if I'm not mistaken. It's a perfect example. You can't just say whatever you will about somebody without checks and balances. So yes, let's have social media come into the mix, definitely. But let's do it in a way that, I can regulate and verify. If I'm going to report something about MT or yourself, Asha, I need to be able to say, have I done my due diligence as a responsible journalist so that I'm not just another guy peddling my own nonsense, QAnon, and anyone else. So I think there's something to be said there about the need to really bring social media not into the mainstream space, but into a regulatory space that allows us to have the confidence that whatever I'm reading is accurate.
Yeah, I want to bring on Hamish to join the conversation as well. Hamish is one of our writers at Common Sense. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, there's something we probably need to also put on the table, which is this fact that the term mainstream is probably a bit of a misnomer too, because when it comes to audience size, some of these online news shows, platforms actually command a greater audience than the broadcast networks. So in a way, they're more mainstream. Maybe this is time to introduce some helpful terms, like I heard some American academics use, which is they would call the mainstream media legacy media, and they would call these new online social media ones new media. So that way it's legacy and new, and not so much mainstream and like quirky. But anyways, on that, Mish, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me onto this show. I think it's a double-edged sword, if I'm being honest, with social media, because I do love social media because it allows lots of voices. I think this is kind of similar to what Ashlan's been saying, like lots of different voices, lots of different stories that I don't think get enough attention for it. But I also think on the flip side, I think social media has allowed and bred stories like misinformation massively. I think we've seen through the coronavirus since like conspiracy theories like QAnon, and the fact that you got bots that could infiltrate our elections, like the EU referendum potentially, or even like the US presidential election. So it's just really tricky because it's kind of like on the plus side, it can allow loads of different voices and different stories that are not getting the attention from mainstream media, quote unquote. But also allows different stories that I don't think are false and fake information. And I agree with Michael to an extent in terms of, Michael, in terms of the like moderating of content. However, I'm wary because I find that Facebook, once they moderate a lot of content, they're like the ones that like the gatekeepers of information, and they can decide what is allowed to be posted and what's not allowed to be posted. And I find that is a very, very scary prospect, massively. Like that's what I feel. But I also do agree that there needs to be a moderation. Like Parler, for example, got banned because of the fact they haven't moderated their content, and it allowed the US Capitol riots to happen. And I think Clubhouse as well is another big mention. They need to, I think, be careful in terms of moderating their content, because I know China has already banned that Clubhouse because of having taboo subjects. So I think I do definitely agree with Michael's comment about like moderating content. But to condense my viewpoint, I think social media is a double knife-edged sword, if that makes sense. Sorry, that's such a tangent. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Michael, go ahead. Anyone to jump in?
Yeah, no, thanks, MT, and Hamish. Yeah, appreciate you raising that, because I'm going to say something incredibly controversial.
Well, not on this show.
Not on this show.
No, but Hamish, you raised a good point. We're going to go there, right? Because we're having a well-rounded discussion. You know, the fact that Jack Dorsey can wake up one day and decide, and when I talk about regulation, Hamish, I'm just talking about the same rules applying to everybody. Just to clarify that, because you're spot on. Jack Dorsey cannot be the single arbiter who decides whether he wants Trump on his social media platform or not. Like, that is insane. Like, I'm not a Trump supporter, I'm not MAGA or whatever, but the fact that you can decide tomorrow morning you don't want the former US president on your platform indefinitely, that is just mental. So I think the point for me is, let's have a regulatory framework, but let's do it in such a way that one rule applies to all. And again, I come back to the court.
Whose rule would that be, Michael?
Yeah, because, and that's a good point. So the mainstream media are regulated by the ombudsman, right? If you've got a gripe, there are certain rules that are clearly articulated by the ombudsman as to what the threshold and the standard of reporting should be.
Yeah.
Something similar will be put in place for social media, just to avoid this kind of arbitrary rule enforcement whenever people feel like it.
No, what I'm asking is which country's rule should apply to all of social media.
That's the big key one.
Thing about publishing, that the rule with book publishing is that the rights are with a particular country, because then those laws and rules have to abide by that country. What happens when you have a situation where the government of a particular country does not want a particular idea or a particular ideology to spread, for example, Black Lives Matter, and decides, you know what, anything that comes up with a hashtag BLM, we're just going to censor it. We're going to censor it out completely, and that is going to be our rule, and that's going to be our law. That's a version of regulation. And actually what that leads to is a lot of people not having access to the information they need. So I'm going to ask you again, whose regulatory power should come into place over all of social media?
Well, this is difficult.
That's a tough
like that,
question, though. It's a good question.
Hold on 1 minute, folks. Because I feel like a referee here in the WrestleMania, because I've got people waiting to be tagged on. I've got people currently going on. I'm trying to do it. It's hard, the referee's job. So before we tackle that point, which I think is super important, I want to bring on Aaron and Siobhan here, who also contribute to that common sense. And you know, folks, don't feel like you have to say something straight away. But this topic is interesting because one of the reasons why social media companies have been so hard to regulate or to really kind of work on this, because they do have random offices, you know, on an island, and then they operate throughout all over the world, you know, basically evading all the different regulations, right? So it's difficult. We all recognize it's difficult, but without getting too drawn away from the conversation here, the question essentially, I think, just so we return to it, because I think it's quite important, is, you know, is social media the good that it almost seems like we're making it out to be? I'm talking here to Afshan particularly, and I think it's only you, Afshan, that's kind of said about, you know, the fact that it helped out in the Arab Springs, right? But is it this good? And I don't think you're alone. In fact, let me read you a quick stat. You know, between 2019 and 2020, a YouGov poll found that 63% of people they polled said that they were using social media more. So more people are using social media, but get this, 61%, right, said that they're more scared about their privacy. 33% more said that they felt that they were less in control. And let's talk about influencers really quickly. 4% said they trusted influencers. So people are trusting social media less, but somehow they're using it more. I mean, you can see why it's hurting people's mental health, right? You're using something you hate more and more and more. How can that be good for anyone?
It was a bit like when TVs first came out. There was this whole idea.
I don't remember that. I'm too
sorry, I'm too young too. Okay, but we can hypothetically go back into our history books, pretend when TVs first came out, there was this assumption that if you watch TV too long, your eyesight would get bad, you know, and there's definitely comparison, maybe kind of like graphs and to be drawn about the TV and maybe general health of people in terms of like the amount of time that we're sitting at home watching TV on our sofas, right? So obviously it's going to affect us in that way. Obviously there's going to be something negative coming out of it, because that's just the nature of when something new is being introduced, something negative is definitely going to come out of it. The interesting thing about this is that we always focus on the negative of social media, but not about how the positive has actually overcome it. The fact is that this stream, this conversation that we're having is, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 of us have got our social media apps in our names, right? We haven't even got our actual names in. We're just known by our apps. This is on Facebook, it's on Periscope, it's on YouTube. Those are social medias. In fact,
don't forget to subscribe.
Social media, yeah, like, share, subscribe, guys. But like without social media, gotta get it in there.
Sorry, I feel like Donald Trump.
we would not be able to be having this conversation. So I'm like, what do you want then, that we don't have social media? If you were to go through mainstream media, let's just say majority of the people that are on this call right now, first of all, wouldn't get in through the door in mainstream media in terms of writing journalism articles, in terms of being on a show to talk about something, because we might not have a journalism background or a degree. We might not have, 25 years of experience of writing it. And, majority of us on this call are not old white men. And that's
okay. But Afshan, let's throw something straight to you. This is something that I think ROE said, and Siobhan and Aaron, feel free to jump in. Take the unfortunate case of Caroline Flack. This was a presenter. I think she presented Love Island, if I'm correct. She then got lots of an X Factor, but she received, if I'm correct, lots of hatred online. Really unfortunate situation. She ended up committing suicide, if I'm correct, because of the bullying and everything she was facing. The question is, in a case like that, of course, we can't really say who's to blame, because ultimately, we don't know the kind of depths of the story. But as far as responsibility goes, what part does social media versus the kind of tabloids we often talk about, what part they have to play? Interesting stat for you. Everyone talks about how Meghan Markle is being, attacked by mainstream media. She definitely has been. However, as of last year, she received the most, I think either the most or the second most negative tweets on Twitter. That's from individual people tweeting about her.
And that's people. You're right. And I think that with social media, it's not an entity, social media. You know, we can't treat them all the same. There are people behind those tweets. There's people behind those Facebook messages. And I think that is a key difference for me between social media and mainstream media. Whereas mainstream medias that exist, the papers that exist are institutions. They're literally owned by like, what, 5 people, own the papers in the UK, the print journalism, even like the TV journalism that we see. That is an institution. So if a journalist was to say something that was to directly or indirectly have affected, say, for example, with Caroline Flack, it wouldn't be that journalist. It would be the organization's responsibility for that. With social media, it is essentially a platform for people to say what they want to say as and when they want to say it. That's it.
No matter how, like I said, you do it or whatever. So you're just saying that anybody can say anything about that person, to the fact that somebody's going to commit suicide.
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm just saying it's a different kind of regulation, because then you're asking about people, and you're asking about, language to be monitored. You're asking about racist or discriminatory language to be filtered out. You're asking for censorship, which is very different from asking about a mainstream media. You know, if a journalist was to write something, you would then attack that mainstream media, the newspaper, for example, for coming in. Aaron, you don't have to put your hand up, just chime in.
You're quite last week, honestly. Just jump in. We don't interrupt. We need to wave hand signal.
At some stage, Aaron's always going to do this.
It's built into me. I'm sorry.
We need a Zoom wave hand signal.
I didn't want to be rude and interrupt Abstein. That's why.
That's okay.
It's just built into me. But yeah, I was gonna say, it's not that I believe that these social media shouldn't be regulated. It's just about what regulation is, because it's a very tricky one. There's a fine line between sharing an opinion and like a person being exempt from scrutiny. So a lot of people, for example, are tweeting about negative tweets about Meghan Markle. Even if that's the case, apart from things such as death threats, harassment, things like that, people should have every right to say what they feel. I don't feel that we should go one step further and try to make certain people exempt from criticism and scrutiny in the way that Caroline Flack kind of was, because with respect to Caroline Flack, when she was on X Factor and Love Island and everything was Happy Day Rose and Nickelodeon, she wasn't talking about regulation then, wasn't talking about bullying then. But as soon as all the stuff starts happening about her boyfriend and this, that, the other, that's when people are calling for her thing. It's like I don't understand.
But where's the line, though? Where's the line? Because now we're going off to the point of view. Because what you may think is an opinion could be hurtful to somebody else, i.e., why suicide happens.
Yeah, it's an entirely subjective thing. This is the whole point. But when you start to go around that line between subjective and the objective, because there's a line that you can't cross. When you try to play around with the idea as in what is subjective, what is objective, once you cross that line, it means there are always going to be people who feel their opinions are not as recognized or as heard or as represented in mainstream as other opinions.
Sorry, go on, Simone.
I bet you thought nothing was wrong with Donald Trump's tweet to go storm the Capitol.
Do you know what? Yeah, it was a bit suspect, but I don't think it was that bad. I don't think so. I don't think it was that bad. It was a bit suspect.
Hold on. I want to understand. What do you mean by suspect? What do you mean by that?
No, I mean in the sense that how do I put it carefully? I believe that he was partially culpable, as in, as the president, you kind of have a responsibility to, if someone's doing something wrong in your name, you have a responsibility, a moral obligation to say, no, this is wrong. But I don't think that this is the person who decided to told these people to literally go and storm the Capitol. These are two different things. To be culpable is to be directly guilty, if that makes sense. It's one thing for you to say to someone to go and do it.
Michael's got his hands up now as well.
It's one thing for you to tell someone, to go and do something. But it's another thing entirely for you to sit back and not do anything. I mean, can you be guilty for not doing something?
Got you.
you know, it just don't make sense. If someone's about
No,
to get hit by a car out the road,
try and get as many of us in before we run out of time. Go on, Michael.
No, of course. Look, you know, great points all around. But just to latch on to what Aaron's saying there, because what the question from Siobhan was perfect. You've got a school of thought that I would imagine, you know, is maybe right of center or slightly right of center or far right, whatever. And then you've also got a school of thought that's further far left or slightly left. My biggest issue with this whole discussion is that it's not sexy or cool to talk about the fact that actually people on both sides are probably not willing to admit what regulation looks like and feels like, because to them it feels like censorship. So MAGA all you want, but then let's talk about, you know, responsibility around the police. Which, by the way, not you know, black cops didn't kill white people storming the Capitol, right? And then inversely, we want to talk about BLM, and then, you know, white police officers are going, well, they were causing an, you know, uproar. The point I'm making is this: what we're trying to do here, my friends, is it's uncharted waters, right? We've never had to think about regulating the internet in our lives. It's like, you know, the fight that the banks are having with Bitcoin. Sorry, I had to slide it in. But, you know, they literally don't know what to do, right? And it's for good reason. It's for good reason. We've never been here before.
Well, here's the thing, folks. I have one regulation we can all agree on right now, and that is that before you start a room on Clubhouse, you have to take a test. You have to take a political, you have to take a literacy test.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a very
it's a test.
Perspective. Why?
No, hold on. I didn't say what type of test. I didn't say what type of test.
Corey made a good point.
You assumed that it's a elitist test.
I don't test well. That's elitist to me. Okay, what type of test do you want me to now take before
I think. Yeah.
Go on, Hamish. Go on, Hamish.
Hold on. He has to first explain what type of test is it that you are expecting people to take.
All sorts of tests. A kind of just a reasoning test would be a good start, I think. Followed by if you're gonna start with politics, just a political literacy one might be good. You know, just so we have a general understanding of what's going on. I don't think that's elitist at all. But sorry, go on, Hamish.
Yeah. You know what I think? I think, you know what this is calling for? I think it's calling for an internet bill of rights, in my eyes. I think we need to know what we're allowed to say, what we're not allowed to say, and we cannot be decided by these big tech companies like Facebook, Twitter. I think it should be decided by the courts themselves. Now, I think you have to then ask yourselves, well, what laws do we actually put ourselves in? Because every single country in the world has different laws. So I actually think the United Nations, for example, needs some sort of world organization. I don't know. Okay, maybe not United Nations, but you know what I'm trying to say? Look, I'm trying to say like a world organization that can actually, you know, sit down and say, right, what laws can we actually have in place?
Fourth Revolution. Check out the fourth group in the Fourth Revolution, where they're talking about regulating the internet. Really?
Interesting. I'll definitely check that out.
In terms of the legal perspective, in terms of how do we stop organizations that we like online, Twitter and Facebook, from using our data and doing what they want with it? You know, what sort of regulation can we bring in that allows for, that doesn't allow for example, a country to censor in the way that some countries are doing already, but does allow for some sort of like broad, you know, cross-agency kind of system that everyone has to abide by.
Absolutely. I mean, is
it not some kind of digital Interpol though?
Hold on, there's a lot to say about like world organizations and censorship. It's obviously a very, very uncomfortable topic for some people. America would love it, of course, because it's another organization they could dominate. China would love it as well.
Yeah.
So small country myself. But you know what? I just realized I had a go at telling you how I would change social media or change. You know what I mean? If you all could change social media in one way and implement one rule, what kind of rule would it be? I already said mine. Mine is Clubhouse chats. To start one, you have to pass a list of tests. That's just for me. You know, what did Barack Obama do? You know, what's a president? All that kind of stuff. with you guys, have a think about it. What would you do? I think this is a nice light bit to end on. Go ahead, Mish.
I would link. Oh, go on, Hamish.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's okay.
had his hand up. That's
Sorry, I say.
I can see that.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I would put an age limit and say you have to be, I think, more older than 16 to actually get a social media account, or 18. I don't know, one of the two. I think they actually should be, because once you do that, you can actually, I think because I don't think a 14-year-old, for example, should have social media right now. I don't think.
So you
But
think
And a
you
40-year-old who
should
has
be able to
nothing to
vote
do
at 16?
with
Hold on.
Sorry?
So you can vote at 16, and you can have. It is 16, isn't it? Yeah, 16, 18. What's the voting age? Voting age is 18.
18. Yeah, 18. Well, okay. Well, like,
so basically,
You can
this is
vote.
why
It doesn't
this
mean
is
you
why you have to pass a test before you can start any.
No, you can have,
Hashtag no
wait,
clubhouse.
Akshay, let Akshay speak. Let Akshay speak. Come on.
That's where I was going. You can have sex at 16 and have children,
Have any time.
but you can't. Legally.
That does not make sense. Just because you can have sex.
No.
doesn't
I
mean
get
you're
Ashton's
illegal.
point. No. I get Ashton's point though.
You're allowed. You legally. in this
Yeah.
country, you can have sex at 16. That's
Everyone's put their hand up at this point.
Right?
But yeah,
So I'm
sorry.
asking, like, you're saying that social media age limit should be 18, but you can have sex at 16.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's because we need to question
Well,
like
what
where
does
the
sex
age
have to
limit
do
is.
with
That's the
bullying?
thing.
I'm just checking you.
And a 40,
Okay,
you know,
let-
but a 40,
Yeah.
but a
Well, I'm sorry,
40-year-old doesn't
Siobhan.
have that much
Siobhan,
more
your
experience than
audio,
somebody
Siobhan, your audio's a bit low. Is there any way you can maybe move closer to the mic? Because I'm struggling to hear you just a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Well, it sounds like you're whispering.
Okay, can you hear me? No.
It's difficult,
low.
but go ahead.
I was saying, okay, so what makes you think a 40-year-old man can be any more intelligent than somebody who's 16?
Age, experience.
Damn. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you know a bit more life
I
experience at
have
this
more
point,
abuse
surely.
online from older people than I have from younger people.
You got what? So let's try again.
Stuff has come from older people rather than younger people. So when you're talking about, like, whether older people have more common sense, I don't think age is the factor here.
All right, let's move straight on to Michael. Michael, what would you change? What's the one thing you would change in your ideal world?
Yeah, I think I would actually make people sign legally binding contracts to be held responsible for whatever they say or do online. Because that's what I do. Because if I could be sued for defaming my neighbor in real life, that should apply everywhere I go. And it also, I think it will give people something to think about before they tweet or say something crazy on the internet. I promise you.
That's an interesting one. Afshan, what would you do?
I had an idea that we'd link all the social medias and your ID together, but then that stops people that are in danger, for example. So a lot of queer communities, a lot of people that are surviving domestic abuse, for example, that will find their communities online won't be able to use that. But it would be so much easier if everyone's real Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, only one account of each of them. We don't want no finsters here. We're all linked together, and then you can see who was who. And it was all, if you could complain to somebody about Facebook, then you could block them on Facebook, and they'd be blocked on Twitter and Instagram and email. All of it linked. And in real life, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Aaron?
An interesting question, because yesterday, I think it was either today or yesterday, Boris Johnson announced this new legislation to stop deplatforming at universities, where freedom of basically intellectual and ideological and academic diversity must be encouraged, instead of people being deplatformed and uninvited from lectures and stuff because their opinions are not seen as quote unquote woke enough. And I think that rule should apply on the internet. There should be a sort of an anti-digital detox where people should be allowed to express their opinions, no matter how controversial, obscene they might be. People must be allowed to express their opinions, as long as it's not. It depends what the law says about freedom of speech, about where the line is drawn. But basically, I think there should be digital version of what we have in terms of freedom of speech, where in the same way the government cannot arrest you for saying certain things, I don't think these private companies should be able to ban you for saying certain things as well, in my opinion.
The notion that if it's not illegal, then it shouldn't be ban worthy. No, I get that.
100%, 100%.
Siobhan, what would you change? You're now on mute, Siobhan, I believe.
Oh no.
Oh no. After a year of Zoom.
I sound like a baby boomer when I say this, but gosh darn, I can't stand this damn technology. So, but I'm just like, I don't know if it's a contract or anything like that, but there has to be somewhere where people need to research what they say on social media, not just put any and everything on there. Let it be supplemented with some actual truth and facts.
That is fair. I think if we take all those changes together, we would have probably a better, probably based on what we think, maybe worse or not. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, Aaron. I see your hand, but we ran out of time. And so we have to end this debate here. Before we end it, though, Afshan, what are your thoughts on some of these suggestions from these amazing people we've just had on this show? What do you think?
I was going to say, follow me on Twitter and Instagram.
This is the problem. No, but I do want to make a serious point, even as our guest can. And guest, feel free to type your idea too. I mean, if you could change social media, if you could change it in one way, let us know what you think. But we definitely do need, I think, less noise out there. We are all inundated with noise, and one of the kind of exciting things about the work we do, I know it sounds like such a shame, such a plug, like, oh, of course you would at the end say this, but honestly, it's one of the things that excites me about the work we do, because the idea is, how do we get rid of the noise and help you to just understand what's actually happening? I think that's a very powerful thing. So if you want to join, it is join.tcsnetwork.uk. It is free. You're not going to be forced. There's no party that's going to force you to do anything here. But check it out. But anyways, on that, it was a really interesting discussion. Please like, subscribe, be a part of what we're doing here. But Afshan, what are your reflections following that conversation?
I'm quite serious. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. And I don't really have a YouTube, but I don't know. Social media is weird. We're kind of, especially now we're in lockdown, we're stuck at home, we have no other option. But for me anyway, to turn to social media. I'm living alone at the moment. I have to be online. I have to do Twitter and Instagram in order to connect with my friends and family and people that I love. So what else can I do, man? There isn't anything else. I will have to carry on using it. I just hope that at some point in the future, the racists and misogynists, homophobes, the transphobes, etc., are banned or censored. But that's all I can hope for. What about yourself?
Superb. Well, no, I love the discussion. I think it's so important. We could, of course, carry on talking about it because it's so important. We've got so many more shows coming out this week, though, so that you can take part in. We've got anything about politics coming on. I think it's with political commentator Darren Grimes. We've got moving parts. If you liked what our political editor was saying there, we're going to have him back and break down some more politics throughout the weekend. So there's just lots of shows happening. And so I want to encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's just the Common Sense Network. Subscribe, turn your notifications on so you're first to find out about videos we have. Our hope is that we can, contribute to less of the noise. But there you go. So thank you for joining us for this broadcast. Do share it. You can watch it back if you want to. That's all we have time for. I've been MT Omni. You've had Afshan D'Souza Lodi with you. And that's it. We shall see you next week, same time at 7 p.m.